Hello, everyone. I'm Dane.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the Malazan Brotherhood podcast, home of the most professional digressors in the world.
Today, we will be discussing Book 2, Chapter 5 of House of Chains, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 1 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not a replacement to reading the books.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those who have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Today's episode contains mild violence, and thus is not suitable for children.
Our show is listener-supported. If you would like to support us, we would really appreciate that. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we are posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. All right, Book 2. Book 2 begins with an excerpt. Quote, "There are folds in this shadow, hiding entire worlds." End quote. And this is from Call to Shadow by Felicin.
Ooh.
What does she have to do with shadow at this point?
Well, we don't know anything at this point.
All right, Chapter 5, Part 1. Chapter 5 begins with a quote. "Woe to the fallen in the alleys of Erin." End quote. And this is an anonymous quote from an unknown source. And that is an ominous way to return to Erin after the events at the end of Deadhouse Gates.
True.
I think it's a good opportunity for us to remind ourselves geographically of where we sit with Erin.
Yes.
So last week, we were talking about Karsa and Torvald and Leomin being in Erlatan, which is on the northern side of Seven Cities. That's from a latitude perspective in alignment with Otataro Island. And then if you continue further east, you'll get to Genebakis, the northern part of Genebakis. And then if you go south from Erlatan, on the eastern side of Seven Cities, you'll hit Erin. And it's a pretty good hike. So basically, like the whole chain of dogs almost. You know, the River Vathar is like halfway through this, if you remember that from Deadhouse Gates, where they had the river crossing with all the people in the trees that were shooting and the yellow butterflies, and that's where Sormo and Nath got shot in the neck with the arrow. That was River Vathar. And then you got a significant portion of the journey south to get to Erin.
What's interesting to me is when you look at the map, it doesn't look like it's that great of a distance. But then, like you said, when you think of Chain of Dogs and how long it took them to get from one area down to Erin, it took a very long time. So these continents are pretty massive.
Yes. And then just for some additional context, Leomin and Toblakai, Karsa, they came out west of Erlatan into the Holy Desert Raraku. They were just about to go into the Holy Desert. And so that lies west of Erlatan. So this is all north of Erin.
Okay. Good reference to keep the mind in the correct locations.
A single kick from the burly soldier in the lead sent the flimsy door crashing inward. He disappeared into the gloom beyond, followed by the rest of his squad. From within came shouts, the sound of crashing furniture. Gamut glanced over at Commander Blistig, then shrugged and said, "Aye, the door was unlocked. It's an inn, after all. Though such a lofty title for this squalid pit is stretching things somewhat. Even so, it's a matter of achieving the proper effect." Gamut replied, "You misunderstood me. I simply cannot believe that your soldiers found him here." Unease flitted across Blistig's solid, broad features as he squinted up the street and said, "Aye, well, we've rounded up others in worse places, Fist. It's what comes of broken hearts." Gamut thought, "Fist. The title still clambers into my gut like a starving crow." He frowned.
Gamut. We haven't heard his name since way back in Gardens of the Moon, I believe. And Fist now instead of a house guard?
Yeah, he was briefly mentioned in Chapter 24 of Deadhouse Gates as Tavora arrived in Erin with her retinue. From house guard to Fist, though, that is quite the jump.
Yeah, he's moving up.
Gamut said, "The adjunct has no time for broken-hearted soldiers, Commander." Blistig said, "It was unrealistic to arrive here expecting to stoke the fires of vengeance. Can't stoke cold ashes. Though don't take me wrong, I wish her the lady's luck." In a dry tone, Gamut said, "Rather more is expected of you than that." This attitude from Blistig is generally not what you want in a leader. It's fine being pragmatic, but this level of negativity will filter through downstream via his mannerisms and the words he uses. There is a measure of stoicism required to set aside your personal feelings and lead through example. If your subordinates see you being overly negative, they will follow your example.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
I think Captain Kindly is an excellent person to look at of someone that displays these qualities. Keep this in mind as we continue reading the books and note the comparison between the way he acts versus the way Blistig acts.
Mm-hmm. He seems very emotional, and I guess we see some of that coming up in a little bit. But I sometimes wonder if you compare these things to real life, people that you've seen in real life, people who are very emotional, maybe they're even passionate about something. In this case, it seems he's passionate about his soldiers and stuff like that. It seems hard for some of these people to contain those emotions. They just come out unbridled a lot of times. And I agree, though, when you do see that from somebody who's supposed to be in a command position, a leadership position, it does definitely have the trickle-down effect in a sometimes negative way.
At work, there is a meeting series that I'm involved in my organization. It's a leadership series where they discuss various articles and books every week. This week, the topic was resilience, and it was in the context of not really personal life, but like how you build resilience in an organization at work. Because the corporate world isn't like the military.
Mm-hmm.
There is a chain of command, but it's different. The people haven't signed their lives away to the military, where it's such a strict chain of command. What stuck out to me this week was the leading by example piece of it that is important, because you'll get in these meetings. I'm in operations, and operations does a lot of things, but a lot of times we're involved in driving change. You have to adopt a new system for 1,000 people that are doing their job. They're working in this software every day. They're used to working in something for 10 years. The company has made a decision to move everybody to this new thing. Things are going to change, and people don't like change in many cases. So there's going to be a lot of negativity sometimes. Calls can get dragged down with how this is negatively affecting certain people. And in some cases, the new software, it's a trade-off. It's not a win for everything. You're never going to get a win for everything. So you have to present things in a way like, here are the wins. Here's how your life gets easier. Sure, you're going to trade off in some areas, but in general, it's going to get better. Some people don't see that. They only see the negative. They're hemming and hawing, and navigating through those, finding people that have a good attitude. Well, I guess it starts with the leadership of those people.
Yes.
Not just telling people, you have to do this because we decided, but presenting it in a way that has their attitude in alignment. Yes, we may be asking more of you in some areas, but in general, this is why we have to go this way, because it will be better for these reasons, you know?
Yeah, to tie that back in to this stuff, having the right person that's like, you might not like it, but this is the way we have to move the squad or the garrison forward, whatever it is, because without it, the whole system falls apart.
If Blistig is overly negative, you're starting off on the wrong foot, because now there isn't that, here's why we have to do what we have to do, or this is the thing that ties us all together, so that there is some incentive to behave differently than someone that's been broken by these horrible events at the end of Deadhouse Gates.
Exactly.
The streets were virtually deserted at this time of day, the afternoon heat oppressive. Of course, even at other times, Erin was not as it once had been. Trade from the north had ceased. Apart from Malazan warships and transports, and a few fisher boats, the harbor and river mouth were empty. This was, Gamut reflected, a scarred populace. The squad was re-emerging from the inn, carrying with them a rag-clad, feebly struggling old man. He was smeared in vomit, the little hair he had left hanging like gray strings, his skin patched and gray with filth. Cursing at the stench, the soldiers of Blistig's errand guard hurried their burden towards the cart's bed. Blistig said, "It was a miracle we found him at all. I truly expected the old bastard to up and drown himself." Momentarily unmindful of his new title, Gamut turned, then spat onto the cobbles and said, "This situation is contemptible, Blistig. Damn it, some semblance of military decorum, of control. Hood take me should have been possible." Blistig stiffened at Gamut's tone. The guards gathered at the back of the cart all turned at his words. Blistig stepped close to Gamut. A tremble shivered across Blistig's scarred cheeks, his eyes hard as iron. Growling under his breath, he said, "You listen to me and listen well. I stood on the damned wall and watched, as did every one of my soldiers. Pormqual running in circles like a castrated cat, that historian and those 2 Wiccan children wailing with grief. I watched. We all watched as Coltane and his 7th were cut down before our very eyes. And if that wasn't enough, the High Fist then marched out his army and ordered them to disarm. If not for one of my captains delivering intelligence concerning Malik Rel being an agent of Shaiks, my guard would have died with them. Military decorum? Go to hood with your military decorum, fist.
Wow. Blistig is not holding back at all. And it makes sense. There's obviously a lot of emotion here, remembering back to how that whole event played out in Deadhouse Gates. It was like a gut punch.
Agreed. But having this discussion in front of the men is a mistake.
Yeah.
That's the mistake here. You have these one-on-one, not in front of other people. If you're in a leadership position, you have to hold this stuff off. That's the stoicism I'm talking about. And I get that Blistig is upset. Hell, I'm upset. Just when he's talking about it, I'm getting mad again. But I'm not the one leading. You can't have it. It's like a poison pill.
Yeah.
It's gonna affect other things.
Yeah, creating that toxic workplace environment.
Yeah, I'm talking like this is leadership. This is what you want. I'm one of those people that sometimes I have trouble separating this stuff. You could say when keeping it real goes wrong. Like, as I've aged, I've gotten a lot better at it. But I'll tell you, when I was at Fry's in those manager meetings, I kept it too real sometimes, and it was not good for me.
Yeah. If you want to advance, those aren't the qualities that you display for everybody.
Yeah. Gamut stood unmoving at the commander's tirade. It was not the first time that he'd felt the snap of this man's temper. Since he had arrived with Adjunct Tavora's retinue and was given the liaison role that took him to the forefront of dealing with the survivors of the chain of dogs, both those who had come in with the historian Duiker and those who had awaited them in the city, Gamut had felt under siege. The rage beneath the mantle of propriety erupted again and again. Hearts not simply broken, but shattered, torn to pieces, trampled on. The adjunct's hope of resurrecting the survivors, making use of their local experience to steady her legions of untested recruits, was, to Gamut, seeming more and more unrealistic with each day that passed. It was also clear that Blistig cared little that Gamut made daily reports to the adjunct, and could reasonably expect his tirades to have been passed on to Tavora in culpable detail. The commander was doubly fortunate, therefore, that Gamut had as yet said nothing of them to the adjunct, exercising extreme brevity in his debriefings and keeping personal observations to the minimum. Do you think Tavora should be informed of this detail so that she has a better measure of the sentiment of the troops she's inherited?
It seems to be a little bit of a balancing act, maybe. How much does Gamut need to go and tattle to Tavora and tell her every little thing that the soldiers are complaining about? I guess some of the things that we get from her later, she seems to be pretty level-headed, and maybe she understands that that's going to be going on, and she doesn't really need the daily, this guy said this and he hates that. I think it's pretty impressive of Gamut, though, to not everything just go tell Tavora, this commander's being a real pain. He's really crying about this or that. I kind of think that he's doing the right thing in a way, that by not going in and telling everything that the guys are complaining about.
I struggle with this one because I see it from two perspectives. Number one, Gamut, we're going to learn later, was a soldier, came up through the ranks. Now, this last jump was significant for reasons we'll discuss later in this episode. But when you're one of the crew, there is the perspective of you keep your stuff to yourself and don't filter it upstream. You have to be measured in what you pass up the chain. Now, that being said, this is how leaders get in a bubble that is completely not representative of the environment that they're in.
That's true.
So if Tavora doesn't have good sources of information telling her exactly what's happening with the disposition of her forces, that's where you have a perception of reality that is not in alignment with what is actually happening. Take the U.S. government, for example. There is a severe disconnect between the majority of people in this country and what the government is seeing or choosing to see as reality for the economy or whatever is going on. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. And it's a tricky balancing act when you're in the middle of this leadership structure, because you're right. Your people have to trust you to know that there is a relationship between you and they're not going to just get hung out to dry. As a leader, it's your job to shepherd the people under you and protect them in a way. Now, there are limits to that, of course. You have to be doing things that are legal and within the rules that you have to operate within. But if you breach that trust, then they're not going to respect you or do the things that you need them to do in the long run. So I struggle with this one because how much of that information does need to get to Tavora? Maybe it's not Blistig specifically, but hey, real talk, we need to do something about these people because this is the situation.
Right.
It's like a anonymized survey. In aggregate, this is your average sentiment amongst the troops, you know?
Right. Well, if he says exercise extreme brevity, then maybe that's exactly what he's doing. Is he's not going specifically to say this commander is got their shorts in a twist. It's just kind of like you say, this is the overall sentiment, and maybe that's all he's relaying and not these individual outbursts. Yeah. Maybe he's handling those, he's taking those on the chin himself and not really passing that on.
Yeah. As Blistig's words trailed away, Gamut simply sighed and approached the cart to look down on the drunken old man lying on its bed. The soldiers backed away a step, as if the fist carried a contagion. Gamut drawled, "So this is Squint, the man who killed Coltane." One of the guards snapped, "Was a mercy." Gamut said, "Clearly, Squint does not think so."
This sounds like an extreme case of survivor's guilt or something like it. I've always had a hard time trying to reconcile what something like that would feel like. Just the amount of guilt and sorrow that Squint must be feeling. Like him specifically, everybody else, but Squint specifically, having to have done the deed that he did. Unimaginable, I would think.
Yeah, I don't think any of us truly knows how we'd feel unless we're put in that position. And I sympathize with him given he was asked to murder a beloved hero of the Malazan Empire, a legendary hero. It can't be easy to carry that burden, even if it was the right thing to do in that moment. Because he personally probably doesn't believe in reincarnation like the Wiccans, so he doesn't see the act as the right thing to do, only that he murdered him.
Yeah, that's true. I wonder how much that would help. I guess that's another one of those questions about faith and stuff like that, and how you can believe in reincarnation or an afterlife or a rebirth or something along those lines that makes it less painful in the moment because you know that person is eventually going to be reunited with you in some other capacity.
Yeah, I don't even know how widespread the knowledge is that the warlocks or the Wiccans in general have access to this type of magic. I'm thinking back to Sormo Inath saying I think it was like 7 crows that it took to carry his soul from when he was originally spiked to the wall. And then Coltane, it was like the sky was black. Right. With the crows that were coming to fill the vessel. Yeah. I mean, I get chills thinking about it every time.
I remember reading through that. That was in the epilogue, I believe.
Yes.
And we spoke about that after I finished that book. And yeah, that was a very, very powerful scene.
Just think of ending a season after all of Deadhouse Gates, the Chain of Dogs, and that's the last scene. After you had your heart broken, and then this is the final scene. At least it ends on maybe the future isn't as dark as we thought type scenario.
Right.
There was no reply to Gamut's statement. Blistig arrived at the fist side as he said to his squad, "All right, take him and get him cleaned up, and under lock and key." The guard replied, "Aye, sir." Moments later, the cart was being pulled away. Gamut faced Blistig once more and said, "Your rather unsubtle plan of getting yourself stripped of rank, shackled in irons, and sent back to Unta on the first ship will not succeed, Commander. Neither the adjunct nor I care one whit for your fragile state. We are preparing to fight a war, and for that you will be needed. You and every one of your crumple-faced soldiers." Blistig said, "Better we'd died with the rest." Gamut said, "But you did not. We have 3 legions of recruits, Commander, wide-eyed and young, but ready to shed 7 cities' blood. The question is, what do you and your soldiers intend to show them?" Blistig glared and said, "The adjunct makes the captain of her house guard into a fist, and I'm supposed to..." Gamut snapped, "4th Army, in the 1st Company at its inception. The Wiccan Wars. 23 years service, Commander. I knew Coltane when you were still bouncing on your mother's knee. I took a lance through the chest, but proved too stubborn to die. My commander was kind enough to retire me to what he figured was a safe position back in Unta. I, captain of the guard in the House of Perrin. But I damned well earned it." After a long moment, a wry grin twisted Blistig's mouth as he said, "So you're as happy to be here as I am." Gamut grimaced, made no reply. It's good to know that Gamut is a seasoned veteran and not some Nepo hire through the Noble Class Network.
Yeah, it is indeed. And it's also, these are, again, just like one paragraph here, but he gives you so much backstory to him that we never had before, and just kind of shows, I guess, he's earned his stripes in a way. Maybe he doesn't feel like he's earned being a fist, but he certainly has a considerable background of being a soldier. Yeah. I like those little nuggets.
I think there's a little bit of a measure of imposter syndrome with Gamut and the title of fist. We'll come back to that in a bit.
Okay.
The 2 Malazans returned to their horses. Swinging himself onto the saddle, Gamut said, "We're expecting the last transport of troops from Malaz Island sometime today. The adjutant wants all the commanders assembled in her council chambers at the 8th bell." Blistig asked, "To what end?" Gamut thought, "If I had my way, to see you drawn and quartered." He said, "Just be there, Commander."
This whole introduction to this chapter is such an intense exchange. Everyone is understandably on edge after Coltane's death, the annihilation of the Seventh Army, what the soldiers and the refugees from the Chain of Dogs must be feeling, or even just being soldiers on the wall at Erin and watching that whole situation unfold. It's just unimaginable what they were going through.
I'd hate to have been there with them watching the tragedy unfolding outside the walls and being ordered to stay inside and not help. The rage and guilt would be extreme. I'm getting all fired up thinking about Pormqual and Malik Rel again.
Yeah.
I need to not think about that so much.
Yeah, it's easy to get worked up over those two idiots.
This kind of goes back to you with Silgar, and you were spiraling into too much joy at seeing the punishment. And I have to really check myself with these two. Mm-hmm. Because it really gets my goat what they did.
These guys are on another level. Silgar is despicable and I don't like him, but I feel like this whole situation is probably worse.
We watched The Count of Monte Cristo last night, and that's a dangerous pill, man, to swallow. The revenge pill, you know? It can destroy you.
Yep. When I was a kid, we were watching, I believe it was called The Innocent Man. If I'm not mistaken, it was Tom Selleck. He gets put in jail, and he has a prison fight. He's fighting one of the other inmates. This guy had been tormenting Tom Selleck. Somebody gives Tom a shank. They'd planned it. This was going to happen. This guy was going to attack him at some point, and he was ready. Tom Selleck stabs the other inmate, and it was like a, plexiglass, I think they said. Snapped it off inside. My father got so into the movie, he was like, finish him! Finish him!
Oh, my God.
He was getting crazy. Like you said, it's a bitter pill. Like, he was so invested in this movie that he could not stand that he was just going to stick him one time and that was going to be it. He wanted
it.
Blood. Yeah. So you're right.
What is it about men and this archetype of movie, the revenge archetype, like the Charles Bronson movies? Why is that so appealing to men?
Sometimes I wonder if it has something to do with the fantasy of what some of us, I guess, in the back of your head, you'd like to see the fruition of revenge come out, but you never do. In real life, that typically doesn't happen unless you're just a real degenerate, I guess. And so maybe it's just a repressed feeling being displayed in fantasy format that kind of gets your blood going enough and emotion, I don't know, some kind of satisfaction, some kind of sick, twisted human satisfaction from seeing that stuff.
It's got to be tied to some innate sense of trying to see justice done. And you're feeling like you were wronged in some way and seeing the justice done.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Because at least in modern times, right? Justice never is that clean. It's always protracted and never the way you hope it to be. Mm-hmm. You always want something like, I would like something a little bit more, like a stiffer punishment for whatever it is. And it always feels like a slap on the wrist. And so having it be acted out that way maybe is more satisfying to people on a subconscious, visceral level.
Yeah, because I think of movies like Law Abiding Citizen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The situation that guy went through with his family at the beginning, that's terrible.
Right.
What he sells his soul to do it. I guess that's ultimately the point of all of it is like, you have to destroy yourself if you're going to go down those roads. Like, there's no way you get out of it unscathed, you know?
Yeah.
And I guess if you've been hurt enough, you're ready to pay that price. You don't see a better life in the future.
Yeah. That's a good point, yeah.
The vast mouth of the Menich River. Is that how you would say that?
I like that. No, but I like it
How
more.
would you say it?
I mean, I didn't put the on it, but
well, it's
I said Menich. It is, you're right. But,
That's my Middle Eastern background.
I didn't want to say it. It's in your blood, I guess.
The vast mouth of the Menich River was a brown, turgid swirl that reached half a league out into Erin Bay. Leaning on the transport's starboard railing just behind the forecastle, Strings studied the roiling water below, then lifted his gaze to the city on the river's north shore. He rubbed at the bristles on his long jaw. The rusty hue of his beard in youth had given way now to gray, which was a good thing as far as he was concerned. The city of Erin had changed little in the years since he had last seen it, barring the paucity of ships in the harbor. the same pall of smoke hanging over it, the same endless stream of sewage crawling the currents into the seeker's deep, through which the broad-beamed, sluggish transport now sailed. Quite the first impression to a city, approaching on a ship and being hit by the stench of the sewage.
Yeah, not nice.
Mm-hmm.
What is a league? Is that about, 14 miles or something?
I always forget.
I don't know. I'm throwing numbers out there, but that's pretty gross to have all this stuff floating out in there.
A league is 5.556 kilometers.
Okay. Metric users.
Let me get that for you in miles.
Yeah. Just a
Freedom
stupid
units,
American.
as it were. I just wish we'd go to metric, man.
It would be much easier. Multiples of 10. I mean, I don't know these odd conversions of 2.2 and this and that.
3.45 statute miles.
Okay, again.
Okay. At sea, a league is typically defined as 3 nautical miles, which is about 3.45 statute miles. So we can't even have the same length of miles, apparently.
Water
Some miles are longer than
like...
others, apparently. All right.
Well, okay, so not 14 miles. I guess I'm thinking of a fortnight. But still, I guess in my head, I think of Erin as kind of a greater city, one that you might not expect to have sewage and things just drifting out into sea. But maybe in the aftermath, that's kind of what's happening.
They don't have sewage treatment plants. So given the state of the world that we're in, unless you have some type of portable hole or in a bottomless bag that you can funnel your sewage into magically, you have to practically do this. And this is interesting because we watched a video on the construction of Venice the other day, how it was built up over time. And sewage originally was just being thrown into the streets, and then they developed a sewage treatment. Now, with Venice, it's interesting because you think, well, the water doesn't seem to be that dirty with sewage. Well, the way they built it, the sewage goes into the canals, but the current every day sweeps it out to sea. So it's not like it just stays in a bay where it's not going anywhere. It actually gets washed out every day. So it doesn't build up.
So this is interesting. One of those situations, I guess, where it's nice to leave it as a postcard. You're on a gondola and you're like having a nice romantic time, but there's raw sewage in the water.
I don't know if it's still doing that, but
okay.
That's how it was built originally.
Okay.
The sewage would go into the canals. Maybe they've adjusted over time. A lot of the construction is still how it used to be, where they're on the wooden pilings that they originally put into the earth to maintain the city. It's wild how smart these people were at that time to do all this. It boggles the mind what they did.
I like that part of history, the ingenuity that people came up with given what they had available to them at that time. At that given point in history.
Yeah, Billy has mentioned this before. We think they were so dumb and we're so smart. Granted, we have computers now and stuff, but people have always been pretty smart. And as they've found creative ways to do things over time, we don't give them enough credit. Building the pyramids, for example. You know, I mean, like, even today, the amount of time it would take to do that. You go look at that church in Barcelona. That's the only thing I can think of that's being built nowadays that kind of qualifies for this legendary building of things. I guess you could consider the Lion in Saudi Arabia one of those aspirational projects. Whether it's a good idea or not, I'm not going to dive into it. Okay. You familiar with this?
No, not that.
Okay, it's the city that's a straight line that's multiple kilometers long.
Okay.
Is taller than the Empire State Building, a skyscraper city that's built in a straight line across the desert in Saudi Arabia. Now it's seeming like it's not going to happen. But that's kind of the scale I'm thinking of these projects, that they're so massive that it's going to take generations to do them and considerable amount of resource and labor to do it. You don't see a ton of that kind of stuff being done unless it's some type of infrastructure project like the Hoover Dam or the Three Gorges Dam in China or something like that, you know? Another digression. I recently saw these people that go to some of these beaches that are really picturesque in certain parts of the world, and they don't read the signs saying, hey, this is not clean water. They go in and the sewage is coming out from the city there. It may look like paradise, then it is not paradise when you go to the hospital and you have been infected with sewage and like you get some type of staph infect or whatever, you know. Read the signs at the beach, people.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't do a lot of traveling, but it is funny. I guess, as I said, that image of keeping the postcard a postcard, you go there and it's what you actually see is a lot different than how nice the picture looks on the internet or whatever.
Or those people that go to these retention ponds that they have at mines where they put the water.
Yeah.
And then it looks beautiful because it's got some mineral in it.
Yeah, it's like emerald or like bright blue or something.
And it's like, do not get in this water. It will kill you. And then they're taking pictures for Instagram.
Yep.
What are you going to do?
Got to do it for the gram.
The newly issued leather cap chafed the back of his neck. It had damn near broken his heart to discard his old one, along with his tattered leather surcoat, and the sword belt he stripped from a Faladin guard who no longer needed it. In fact, he had retained but one possession from his former life, buried down in the bottom of his kit bag in his berth below decks, and he had no intention of permitting its discovery by anyone.
These little clues, though, they're so fun on the second read-through. Very similar to the one we just saw in the last chapter with Leoman. When he takes something out of his pack, you hear a little rustle of chain. Just a little something that makes you wonder.
Yeah, there's hints aplenty here, but I do appreciate that, especially going back and connecting the pieces. This is the joy of the second read through and beyond, where I didn't realize he was talking about that here. It's so deep.
And I mean, I've seen this in an Erikson interview where he does talk about rewarding multiple read-throughs when you miss details here and there and you go back and then you catch them second, third, fourth time, something that you still missed. And then you can finally draw that connection. It's really fun.
Yeah. A man came alongside him, leaned casually on the rail, and stared out over the water to the city drawing ever nearer. Strings offered no greeting. Lieutenant Rannall embodied the worst of Malazan military command. A nobleborn, commission purchased in the city of Quan, arrogant and inflexible and righteous, and yet to draw a sword in anger. A walking death sentence to his soldiers, and it was the Lord's luck that Strings was one of those soldiers. That is not a good combination. This guy wouldn't last a day among the bridge burners.
Oh, yeah. Think about what they were trying to do to Perrin, trying to stick a knife in his back. You know,
he didn't even do anything.
Exactly. He just arrived. So, yeah.
That's the perception of these noble class, and Perrin had to fight it and earn his place every step of the way. Because if it is somebody that has no combat experience and they don't have the loyalty of the people and they haven't done anything themselves, then you have to have some measure of experience or proper training in order to lead these people. And it seems like this guy just, we'll find out more about him as time goes on.
Yeah.
The lieutenant was a tall man, his Quan blood the purest it could be, fair-skinned, fair-haired, his cheekbones high and wide, his nose straight and long, his mouth full. Strings had hated him on sight.
This really makes me laugh. It reminds me of when you and I first met.
Man, we haven't told this story publicly on this podcast yet. Do you want to go into this right now?
I don't know if we need to go in the full story, but your initial thoughts, like when we discussed this later, when I came into the shop, you'd already been there for, what, a year?
9 months or something like that. Yeah, it wasn't too much longer. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I'm a new hire.
Okay, well, let's set the stage, I guess, just briefly. We both worked at a car dealership together in the early 2000s, and I had been there for about 9 months. Both of us went through the same training program at different stages for Audi technical training. So we were specialized in Audis, and so we're at the biggest Audi dealership in the country at the time. One day I see this guy walking through the shop. I'm looking at him. The thing that stuck out to me was his backpack. And I'm looking at this backpack. Describe the backpack.
It was some ridiculous thing. I was on vacation in Vegas, and it was a hard-shelled backpack. It sort of looked like a toboggan or something strapped to your back. It was soft against your back, and then like a hard plastic outer shell. It was also bright orange.
What it looked like is if you're a motorcycle rider and you wanted a little duck wing for aerodynamics on the back of your bike, it had a little tail on it.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, my God. Now, I should say something about me. I am not the most open person to meeting new people.
No.
It takes me a while to open up to people, but once I get to know people and we become friends, I'm a very loyal friend. But it takes a while for me to open up to people and get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Dane had to break my cold, closed heart open.
It took some doing, and it didn't help. There were some missteps along the way. Deliberate ones on my part, too. Like, it was my game. But, yeah, that was... I still remember the look when I came into the shop, and it was, like, kind of overwhelming. That was a relatively large dealership. I don't remember exactly what we have, 20 people, maybe? 25?
There's a lot of bays. I don't remember exact number.
Like that.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of people, and I remember getting the shop manager walking me through and looking around, and there's this guy giving me one hell of a dirty look. And,
really? You remember the look I gave you?
Yeah, it's the look you give me all the time.
Oh my God. You're painting me to be some villain. Oh.
Well, in the early days.
I'm such a monster.
In the early days, we were each other's nemesis, I think.
Really? I don't know if it was that far.
I don't know, man. We had some pretty fun exchanges. Anyway.
To be fair, when I was a younger man, I was kind of an asshole, I think.
I still am.
Randall addressed Strings with affected indifference as he said, "It is customary to salute your superior." Strings said, "Saluting officers gets them killed, sir." Randall asked, "Here on a transport ship?" Strings replied, "Just getting into the habit." Randall said, "It has been plain from the start that you have done this before, soldier." He paused to examine the supple, black knuckles of his gloved hands, then continued, "Hood knows you're old enough to be the father of most of those Marines sitting on the deck behind us. The recruiting officer sent you straight through. You've not trained or sparred once, yet here I am, expected to accept you as one of my soldiers." Strings shrugged, said nothing. After a moment, with his pale blue eyes fixed on the city, Randall said, "That recruiting officer said she saw from the start what you'd been trying to hide. Oddly, she considered it, you, to be more precise, a valuable resource, even so much as to suggesting I make you a sergeant. Do you know why I find that odd?" Strings replied, "No, sir, but I'm sure you will tell me." Randall said, "Because I think you were a deserter." Strings leaned far forward and spat down into the water, then said, "I've met more than a few, and they've all got their reasons, and no two of them are alike. But there's one thing they all have in common." Randall asked, "And what is that?" Strings said, "You'll never find them in an enlistment line, Lieutenant. Enjoy the view, sir." He turned away and wandered back to where the other Marines sprawled on the midship deck. Most had long since recovered from their seasickness, yet their eagerness to disembark was palatable. Strings sat down, stretched out his legs.
Strings' reasoning here sounds so obvious, it's almost a surprise that Randall would even suggest it as a possibility.
Randall is a joke. I love how Strings is able to beclown him without getting in trouble.
Beclown.
I love that word. We need more beclowning in this world.
We do. I've never seen that before. That's fantastic.
Besides Strings, a voice murmured, "Lieutenant wants your head on a plate." Strings sighed and closed his eyes, lifting his face to the afternoon sun, and said, "What the lieutenant wants and what he gets ain't the same thing, Corrick." The Seti half-blood replied, "Well, what he'll get is the bunch of us right here." Corrick rolled his broad shoulders, strands of his long black hair whipping across his flat-featured face. Strings said, "The practice is to mix recruits with veterans. Despite everything you've heard, they're survivors of the chain of dogs in yon city over there. A whole shipload of wounded Marines and Wiccans made it through, I've heard. And there's the Errand Guard and the Red Blades. A number of coastal Marines ships straggled in as well. Finally, there's Admiral Knox's fleet, though I imagine he'll want to keep his own forces intact." Another recruit asked, "What for? We're heading for a desert war, aren't we?" Strings glanced over at her. Frighteningly young, reminding him of another young woman who'd marched alongside him a while ago. He shivered slightly, then said, "The adjutant would have to be a fool to strip the fleet. Knox ready to begin the reconquest of the coast cities. He could have started months ago. The Empire needs secure ports. Without them, we're finished on this continent." That's another clue there about him shivering when he thought of another young female recruit he knew in the past.
Mm-hmm.
The young woman muttered, "Well, from what I've heard, this adjunct might be just what you said, old man. Hood knows she's noble-born, ain't she?" Strings snorted but said nothing, closing his eyes once more. He was worried the last might be right. Then again, this Tavora was sister to Captain Perrin, and Perrin had shown some spine back in Darujistan. At the very least, he was no fool. After a moment, the young woman asked, "Where'd you get the name Strings anyway?" Fiddler smiled and said, "That tale's too long to tell, lass."
I love this. The reintroduction to Fiddler, but the new naming keeps the anonymity. It's really fantastic stuff.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see him again. The madman has come back to Seven Cities because the Empire needs soldiers like him. What a guy.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, at the end of Deadhouse Gates, I thought explicitly said he wants to reenlist. He's one of those soldiers that no matter what kinds of horrors he's seen, he just can't turn his back on the military.
You are correct. Fiddler tells Kalam that he wants to be involved in putting down the rebellion in Seven Cities and explicitly states, "So I'll enlist again." Kalam responds by asking Fiddler to simply stay alive, and Shadowthrone expresses a rare moment of genuine respect, noting that soldiers like Fiddler are the reason the Empire was able to conquer half the world. Following this exchange, Shadowthrone transports Fiddler to the alley behind Smiley's Tavern to begin his new path.
Okay, yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, and that all took place at the end of Deadhouse Gates.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's come back to Fiddler's age for a second. It's talking about how Fiddler, his beard is turning gray. Perrin is 12 years old in the prologue to Gardens of the Moon. Fiddler was not that much older than him. I think he was in the high teens at the time. So, given that they're talking here about Fiddler's beard turning gray, I had always assumed that he's in his 40s. So, the prologue takes place in 1154 Burned Sleep. So, Perrin is 12 years old. In 1161, Perrin is 19 years old. So then that means that Fiddler has to be...
like 22? 23?
Somewhere mid-20s, let's say.
Mid-20s?
Coltane arrives in Seven Cities. The beginning of Deadhouse Gates is in 1164. So that makes Perrin 21 in Deadhouse Gates, which is taking place alongside Memories of Ice for the most part. So that means, Perrin's 21. Fiddler is maximum high 20s. You assume some period of time takes place, say it's a year throughout Deadhouse Gates and Memories of Ice. That means Fiddler's in his 30s right now. His beard is turning gray. I guess just putting that in context, people age quite quickly in this world, it feels like. But then there seems to be a long tail for some of them to where Dujak's like 70s or 80s, and then Tattersail's 200. So age is weird when sorcery gets involved and alchemical ways to keep people alive, that kind of stuff.
Well, not to mention, I would imagine the stresses of being a soldier in general.
Good point.
You're a sapper. And, you're getting your scalp burned off and stuff like that from explosions, and seeing some of the things that he's done going through, what was the trail called? The Trail of Paws or whatever, when they were...
Path of Hands.
The Path of Hands.
The Trail of Paws. Oh, that's great. Wonderful. That's so good, dude. That's a t-shirt.
The
Trail of Paws.
But to
could have the hippo paws. Do hippos have paws? They have feet. Capybara have paws.
No, they don't. They're a rodent. You wouldn't say that a rodent has paws, would you? A rat?
So what has paws? Dogs and cats?
Yeah.
Bears?
Bears have paws.
Okay.
You've got paws. But either way, I think myself, I feel like I got gray rapidly through some of the family stuff that goes on, high levels of stress. And all of a sudden, you look at a picture that was like 2 years ago, and I didn't have that much, if any, gray. And now it's like, wow, you have a lot of gray hair all of a sudden.
Yeah, but we're in our 40s. We're not in our 30s. Some people do go prematurely gray, like Anderson Cooper, or Steve Martin feels like he's been gray since since whatever, So I guess there's genetic reasons why people would go gray earlier too. I do notice among my friend group, my hair has stayed relatively not gray until recently, and now it's starting to come in earnest. I say my beard, since I shave my head, you can't really tell.
Yeah. Well, to go back a little bit, I feel like you and Billy had talked about this as well. From the very beginning, you're right. You do get the sense that Fiddler is much older than what he actually is. And I guess for all of them, for Ganos as well, same thing. Even though it's always stated that they're, much younger, 12 years old when it starts, throughout reading the books, I always envision him as an older, certainly much older than early teens.
Yeah. Her gauntlets thudded down onto the tabletop, raising a cloud of dust. Armor rustling, sweat soaking the underpadding between her breasts, she unstrapped her helmet and, as the wench arrived with the tankard of ale, dragged out the rickety chair and sat down. Street urchin messenger, delivering a small strip of green silk which bore, written in a fine hand, the Malazan words, Dancer's Tavern, Dusk. Lostara Yil was more irritated than intrigued. The interior of Dancer's Tavern consisted of a single room, the four walls making some ancient claim to whitewashed plaster, remnants of which now clung to the adobe bricks in misshapen, wine-stained patches, like a map of a drunkard's paradise. The low ceiling was rotting before the very eyes of owner and patron, dust sifting down in clouds lit by the low sun that cast streams of light through the front window's shutters. Already the foam-threaded surface of the ale in the tankard before her sported a dull sheen. There were but 3 other patrons, 2 bent over a game of slivers at the table closest to the window, and a lone, mumbling, semi-conscious man slumped against the wall beside the piss trench.
What is it with so many of these taverns being complete cesspools? I love the imagery, but could you imagine trying to sit and have a drink? I mean, it sounds like the latrine is right in the bar area.
Yeah, it does sound like the piss trench is in the same room. And I'm not sure where the females are supposed to go. This sounds like a male-centric establishment. Separately, there may be fancier establishments. We're just seeing the seedy underbelly of the city. The wretched hives of scum and villainy, like in Mos Eisley, you know?
Yeah, true. I guess the characters we're following are more likely to be in these places than some fancy establishment.
They're not getting a sommelier feeding them cheeses and wines.
Right.
Although early, the Red Blade captain was already impatient to see an end to this pathetic mystery, if mystery it was meant to be. She needed but a moment to realize who it was who had set up this clandestine meeting. And while a part of her was warned by the thought of seeing him again, for all his affectations and airs, he was handsome enough. She had sufficient responsibilities to wrestle with as Tene Beralta's aide. Thus far, the Red Blades were being treated as a company distinct from the adjunct's punitive army, despite the fact that there were few soldiers available with actual fighting experience, and even fewer with the backbone to put that experience to use. The disordered apathy rife in Blistig's Errand Guard was not shared by the Red Blades. Kin had been lost in the chain of dogs, and that would be answered. She thought, if.
Real quick, I think that that's an interesting distinction between the Red Blades and the Errand Guard of Blistig's people. They're treating this completely different, even though she said they had kin, other soldiers in the chain of dogs, but they feel, I guess as she says, the Errand Guard feels apathy, they feel anger, and that they want revenge. I think that's an interesting distinction between the two groups. I wonder why.
Let's go back to a couple episodes ago where we're discussing the tribes of 7 cities, the Iraq and the Grauls specifically at that time, but others as well, I think. Their general proclivity for feuds and answering slights and wrongs.
Okay.
The Red Blades are 7 cities natives, and I wonder if this is a cultural difference that we're seeing here.
Interesting. Okay, I hadn't thought about that, / probably just completely forgot about it. That's probably a good distinction, yeah.
Also, the Red Blades feel a little bit like the Inquisition in Warhammer, too. Like, they're zealots.
Yeah. Got a little bit more zest for this kind of stuff. Okay.
Those two things combined may be contributing to this. That's my suspicion.
Okay.
The adjunct was Malazan, an unknown to Lostara and the rest of the Red Blades. Even Tene Beralta, who had met her face-to-face on 3 occasions, remained unable to gauge her, to take her measure. Did Tavora trust the Red Blades? Lostara thought, maybe the truth is already before us. She's yet to give our company anything. Are we part of her army? Will the Red Blades be permitted to fight the whirlwind? Questions without answers. And here she sat, wasting time.
So this is still something, we've talked about this a couple times. I guess it's still a confusing thing for me, the relationship between the Red Blades and the Malazan army. It's always hard to track when they're working together, when they're fighting each other. There always seems to be some kind of distrust. And maybe that's just baked into the relationship.
As natives of 7 cities, I suspect there will always be suspicion from the Malazans that hail from Quan Tali or the Isle of Malaz when it comes to this part of the army. It reminds me a little bit of the people that were siding with the Americans in Iraq or Afghanistan, whether people trust them or not.
Okay.
When they're trying to help free their own country and siding with the invaders, what level of trust exists between the soldiers of the army that's coming there from another country and those people?
Okay. Yeah. Another good point. So you think maybe it's not just all Malazans who have distrust, but maybe specific ones from certain areas that kind of come together within the Malazan army?
If you don't know someone personally and have a sense of trust or loyalty built up, I think you'd have this suspicion. If you get to know someone on an individual basis, it's different. Because as humans, we always generalize. But then when you get to know somebody and you go through something together, there's a deeper loyalty that's built through you proving to each other that you can trust each other and saving each other's lives or whatever the case is. If it's someone that never spoke with someone from 7 cities, I could see there being a suspicion because they're an other instead of someone that you've done something with.
Speaking of them being other, aren't they normally kind of considered to be a mercenary?
The Red Blades?
Like the Red Blades, like a mercenary contingent? No?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, either way, it seems like you're right, that they generally seem to be separate from the Malazan army. So maybe that is just like a separation, like Marines and Army, or Air Force, like
they're their own unit, is what
they're
you're saying.
their own unit, exactly. So maybe that has something to do with it as well.
Yeah, if you don't incorporate them into the wider group, they are different. That's another thing too.
Okay.
If you're not standing shoulder to shoulder with them, they're doing their own thing, their own special rules, then it's almost like if you're in a guild in World of Warcraft and you have 6 people that come in and they're only loyal to each other, but they need the wider group to raid with them. And then there's always that little bit of, well, are you loyal to the guild or are you loyal to each other?
Right.
And then one time, one of them might get upset of the 6, and in the middle of a raid, he might take all his gear off because he's done. He's been wronged by the raid leader.
Yeah.
and then
right out of there.
The fun switch is off.
Yeah.
and then everybody, the 6 have to quit the guild because the one person decides that, no, I've been wronged. You know?
Right. So, our loyalty to the one is more
greater than to the guild.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, not that this has ever happened in history.
No. That's some next level manipulation right there.
Should have given me that gear and there wouldn't have been a problem.
Just give it to me. Damn it, I don't know what the problem is. Give me what I want.
The door swung open. A shimmering gray cloak, green tinted leathers, dark, sunburnished skin, a wide, welcoming smile. The man said, "Captain Lostora Yill, I'm delighted to see you again." He strode over, dismissing the approaching serving wench with a casual wave of one gloved hand. Settling into the chair opposite her, he raised 2 crystal goblets that seemed to appear from nowhere and set them on the dusty table. A black bottle, long-necked and glistening, followed. The man continued, "I strongly advise against the local ale in this particular establishment, my dear. This vintage suits the occasion far better. From the sun-drenched south slopes of Gris, where grow the finest grapes this world has seen. Is mine an informed opinion, you are wondering? Most assuredly so, lass, since I hold a majority interest in said vineyards." Lostara asked, "What is it you want with me, Pearl?" I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to review their history with each other briefly. It's been over a year since we went through the events of Deadhouse Gates. So initially, they were working together to track Kalam. At some point, they got detoured into helping Coltane, and they went via Warren to battle that Semk demon. If you remember, that was a really cool infiltration thing that Duerker had to go on, where they went through the tunnel under the ground, and then they invaded that camp, and there was that one shaman guy that had all of his orifices sewn shut to keep the pieces of the demon in him.
Yeah.
Such a really cool concept. Yeah. So during that fight, Pearl was using some throwing knives that we didn't know where it came from. Duerker was saved, and then together they helped kill the Semk demon. But Lostara's horse was killed through some sorcery, and she was pretty grievously injured. Pearl heals her and then brings her back. At some point, they have to separate because Lostara goes back to the Red Blades and gets imprisoned immediately, basically, because they're outlawed. So that's kind of the high level of what these two's history is together. And Pearl was flirting with her all the time, and Lostara Yill is supposed to be quite attractive, so Pearl is, doing what men do.
He's shooting his shot. No, that's good. I had forgotten that bit about the demon, that's where those throwing knives had come from, kind of mysterious and all that. That's a good reminder. I like that.
Man, that was such a cool fight scene.
Fantastic stuff.
Pearl poured the magenta-hued wine into the goblet, his smile unwavering. He said, "Plagued as I am with sentimentality, I thought we might raise our glasses to old times. Granted, they were rather harrowing times. Nonetheless, we survived, did we not?" Lostar replied, "Oh yes, and you went your way, on to greater glory, no doubt, whilst I went mine, straight into a cell." Another quick reminder, where Pearl went after that, he was on the transport ship, the Ragstopper, with Kalam on the way to Malaz Island. He was Salk Elan, and
that's right.
He betrayed Kalam, stabbed him, and then threw him into the waters and basically wished him well on his little survival tirades through Malaz City.
Because those waters were all full of sharks and everything too.
He had to get to the shore first, had no weapons.
Yeah.
He's bleeding in the water. Yeah, that was a rough thing for him.
It's funny to see how charming he can be through this section and how dirty he can be thinking back to Deadhouse Gates with Kalam. the subterfuge. What was he using? Makra or something? Some kind of mind?
It felt that way. He was messing up everybody's minds on that ship.
Yeah.
I guess it comes with the profession. You think of these CIA people, they're all about manipulating people, and if they have to, they will do some bad stuff. That type of espionage type person. Pearl sighed and said, "Ah, well, poor Pormqual's advisors failed him dearly, alas. But I see now that you and your fellow Redblades are free once more. Your weapons return to you. Your place in the adjunct's army secure." Lostara said, "Not quite." Pearl arched an elegant brow. Lostara collected the goblet and drank a mouthful, barely noticing his taste, then said, "We have had no indication of the adjunct's wishes towards us." Pearl said, "How strange." Scowling, Lostara said, "Enough games. You surely know far more about it than we do." Pearl said, "Alas, I must disabuse you of that notion. The new adjunct is as unfathomable to me as she is to you. My failure was in making assumptions that she would hasten to repair the damage done to your illustrious company, to leave unanswered the question of the Red Blade's loyalty."
I don't know about you, but Pearl's speech reminds me a little bit of Krupp. He seems very loquacious. Do you get that feeling at all?
Not as bad as Krupp, but like some people, he certainly loves the sound of his own voice.
That's true. He does. He will go on and on. We get a little bit of that from him coming up.
Yeah. Pearl sipped wine, then leaned back and said, "You have been released from the jails. Your weapons returned to you. Have you been barred from leaving the city? From headquarters?" Lostara said, "Only her council chambers, Pearl." The claw's expression brightened as he said, "Ah, but in that you are not alone, my dear. From what I have heard, apart from the select few who have accompanied her from Unta, the adjunct has hardly spoken with anyone at all. I believe, however, that the situation is about to change." Lostara asked, "What do you mean?" Pearl replied, "Why, only that there will be a council of war tonight, one to which your commander, Tene Baralta, has no doubt been invited, as well as Commander Blistig, and a host of others whose appearances will likely surprise one and all." He fell silent then, his green eyes holding on her. Lostara slowly blinked. Then she said, "That being the case, I must needs return to Tene Baralta." Pearl said, "A fair conclusion, lass. Unfortunately, wrong, I'm afraid." Lostara said, "Explain yourself, Pearl." Pearl leaned forward once more and topped up her drink, then said, "Delighted to. As recalcitrant as the adjunct has been, I did manage to have occasion to present to her a request, which she has approved." Lostara's voice was flat as she asked, "What kind of request?" Pearl replied, "Well, sentimentality is my curse, as I mentioned earlier. Fond are my memories of you and me working together. So fond, in fact, that I have requested you as my aide. Your commander has, of course, been informed." Lostara snapped, "I am a captain in the Red Blades, not a claw, not a spy, not a She bit the word back. Pearl's eyes widened as he said, "I am deeply hurt, but magnanimous enough this evening to excuse your ignorance. Whilst you may find no distinction between the art of assassination and the crude notion of murder, I assure you that one exists. Be that as it may, permit me to allay your fears. The task awaiting you and me will not involve the ghastlier side of my calling. No, indeed, lass, my need for you in this upcoming endeavor depends entirely upon two of your numerous qualities. Your familiarity as a native of 7 cities, for one, and the other, even more vital, your unquestioned loyalty to the Malazan Empire. Now, while you could in no way argue the veracity of the former, it now falls to you to reassert your claim to the latter." She stared at him for a long moment, then slowly nodded and said, "I see. Very well, I am at your disposal." Pearl smiled once more and said, "Wonderful. My faith in you was absolute." Lostara asked, "What is this mission we are to embark upon?" Pearl replied, "Details will be forthcoming once we have our personal interview with the adjunct this evening." She straightened and asked, "You have no idea, do you?" Pearl's smile broadened as he said, "Exciting, yes?" Lostara said, "So you don't know if it will involve assassination?" Pearl said, "Assassination? Who knows? But murder? Assuredly not. Now drink up, lass. We must needs march to the palace of the late High-Fist. I have heard the adjunct has little tolerance for tardiness." Man, he's selling her on a mission and he doesn't even know what it is.
Yeah. Not only is he selling her, he's included her. He's already asked permission on her behalf, to which he doesn't know what the mission is, or if she even will accept it.
Or if she's even needed.
Yeah. He just wants her. That's it. He just wants her around.
All right, we're going to stop there and we'll pick up the chapter where we left off next week. For standout moments.
Getting reintroduced to some of these characters after such a long break. Some of them we followed a lot. Some of them we get to know more. But people like Gamut and Blistig, Lostara and Pearl, Fiddler. There's so many. And I'm just excited.
Yeah, it was a good trip down memory lane. It almost feels like the beginning of a new book compared to what we just went through with Karsa. That was like an extended prologue almost.
Yeah.
I know we're early in the book, so not a lot has happened yet, but it's great to see these characters again. I particularly enjoyed Fiddler making a fool of Randall. You love to see it.
Yeah. Picking up right after the end of Deadhouse Gates, and everyone still seems to be reeling from the losses, and now immediately getting thrown right back into another imminent battle. I don't remember the exact timeline of those, like if it's been days or weeks or months between Coltane and that whole chain of dogs getting into Aaron, but it doesn't seem like anybody's had enough time to grieve. But I guess they're at war. That's the way it is. You don't really get a lot of time to just sit and have a sulk in the corner about it.
I don't think it's been very long at all since Tavora arrived at the end of Deadhouse Gates.
It was kind of like her ship was there, or she had already arrived.
They were watching her walk into the Fist Keep or something.
Okay. Yeah. So
the time between her landing and then now, I don't think it's been over a month, really. It sounds like it's been pretty quick. Now, your point on it being war and not having time to grieve, that detachment that soldiers have to develop to survive in the moment is something that can come back to bite them later once they're done with service, where you have to compartmentalize everything at the time to be able to do what you need to do moving forward. But then bottling up the emotions, that leads to problems. Because when you get back, you have to be able to process that. And it sounds like since they've had a little bit of downtime, they're processing some of it, but it is nowhere near long enough for them to be, if ever, recover from that. Jumping back to what's going on here with Blistig and the surviving soldiers within Aaron, all the wrong that they witnessed when they were standing on the wall, seeing what happened to Coltane and then the army that went out and was disarmed and crucified on Aaron Way. I don't know how you get over that after having lived through that.
I don't think you can. That seems like one of those life-changing moments for these characters. You're right. You likely never get over that. That just stays with you.
Yeah, and jumping back to Blistig and what you would have to do to lead, it is almost like you have to compartmentalize and in your mind find a way to lead these people. That's such a tricky road because you're feeling what they're feeling too, having seen that, but you have to put them in a position to succeed. You can't just be negative all the time. You have to find something to latch onto and present to them and get them over the hump because that's the job of the leader. People are human. Nobody's perfect. I think it's interesting to see Blistig inserted into the story as this type of negative person that had to go through this and isn't suited to leading these people, but he has to because they don't have anybody else.
Right.
All right. Great job today, Dane.
Good job, Kamraun.
You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
I think given the topic of what we were just discussing with Blistig, I think it will be very interesting to see how his character develops going forward and how he's able to either pull it together or not going forward, leading his troops, and not just Blistig, but some of the other commanders that we'll get introduced to going forward. This is, I think, a really interesting read this coming section as we're getting back into the Malazan military. And you and I both enjoy the dialogue between all the Marines and things. So just, again, looking forward to some of the some of the hijinks and things that are going to start happening.
Oh, my God. So we're in 7 cities. We have the Malazan military. I'm in heaven. This is where I like to play. This is my wheelhouse. I love this area.
Like a breath of fresh air for you.
Oh, yeah. Love it. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.